May I please invite on stage the panelists, the speakers of this session. Sharvil Patel, MD Zydus Lifesciences, Cadila Healthcare, one of the leading global healthcare providers and the fourth largest life sciences company in India. Good morning. And Jinal Mehta, Managing Director, Torrent Power and Torrent Gas, a man with 16 years of experience across various facets of the energy sector, generation, transmission and distribution of power, and trading and distribution of gas. And of course, the moderator of this session, Boman Irani, is already with us on stage. We'd like to begin this session by presenting mementos to our esteemed speakers, tokens of our affection and appreciation. May I please request Deepak Patel, CREDAI Gujarat, to do the honors by presenting the memento to Sharvil Patel.
I was telling both of them, Ram, listen to me. Ram, listen to me. First bench and you're doing all this. Okay. I was telling both of them that no matter how many times मैं गला फाड़ फाड़ के बोलूं कि India is on a growth path, India is doing this, India is doing that, आप लोग तभी मानोगे when you have someone like these big Skyans out here, you know, each running companies that are worth 60,000 plus crores, and when they tell you, please, I beg you at least then listen and understand what exactly we are trying to say. And while you're taking pictures out there, take some of us also. All right. So, thank you very much, Sharvil. Thank you very much, Jinal, for being here with us. First of all, what are your views on what you have experienced so far? Yesterday at the India-Egypt Summit, and today, the way you're seeing our developer fraternity. Just go for it. I think so.
Thank you, Boman. Firstly, let me thank Shekhar Bhai, yourself, and the entire CREDAI team for having invited me here to your national conclave in this beautiful resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh. It's a real pleasure to be here. Met some old friends yesterday and met some interesting people who I had the pleasure of knowing yesterday as well. Secondly, I'm pleasantly surprised to see the hall completely full despite last night's party. So I suppose you guys are here for some serious business along with some serious partying.
Sharvil, this guy is too measured in his words. Why don't you give us the fun side of what you're seeing?
So I think, again, thank you, CREDAI, for inviting us and giving us this opportunity to share our insights. But I think in the last 6 months, I had the opportunity to visit a few countries, partly on my own, but partly like through these kind of conferences. And one thing that was very clear that India is definitely on the map and on the agenda of all countries. So I think that's the biggest thing for us, that if you talk about a globalized world, and if you see the respect and the reverence that India is getting because of the efforts that has been put in by the government, I think it is for all of us to encash that opportunity. And that's what I visibly see every time, whether it is Egypt or whether you talked about developed countries like US, UK, you are seeing great opportunity for India, great respect for India. And I think that's overwhelming for us. We have not seen this for so many decades now. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us.
So overall, you guys see that there's a positivity or a buzz that will kind of keep going strong, right?
Very much, very much.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So guys, once again, I'm repeating, we are possibly on the path to becoming one of the fastest growing economies, and it is just our time right now. So I'm going to ask these gentlemen as to a few simple questions, and then I might pass the mic around for one or two questions in the audience also. So please start thinking. First question for you guys, second gen, third gen business people, how do they think about the changing India? Are you guys more, how do I say this, calibrated or do a lot of risk assessment before you invest in more in India? Or is there a way of kind of working on the gut that this country is actually growing? Any one of you can take that question.
So we obviously do a fair degree of risk assessment before making any major capital allocation. As we have grown into a large corporate now, the risk appetite naturally reduces from where you start off. When my father and my grandfather actually started the business, the stakes were low. They grew the business by taking a very large amount of risks. But now we have more very risk assessments before making any capital allocation, and the risk appetite in general reduces as you grow into a larger corporate. But yes, I mean, without risk hai to ishq hai, like they say. So, but without risk, there is no growth, and our mandate as owner managers is really to grow the organization, to grow it, create shareholder value, and that's how we have a very solid framework around where we have a group executive council which looks at any large capital outlay. We run the pros and cons through professionals within the group, as much as we have an equal say along with professionals. So it's a very structured format in which we approach these issues.
With the day I joined the business, I think I've learned two things. One is, obviously we're a very old company. We've been there since 1950s. So I think there is two, as you talk about a country which has two phases, each company probably goes through those two phases also. So I think we have a business that is sustainable, assured, recurring, it keeps on delivering its value. So very, very little sort of input that an entrepreneur puts into that business. But what is exciting for us is, because we have the capital, because we have the capability to raise funds, is to invest in and nurture new businesses. So while we are in the business of pharmaceuticals and all, but I think nurturing new, so I think my first task was, how do I build a biotech business from a traditional pharmaceutical business? How do we get into digital? I mean, we're not the best at it, but learning about the digital disruption happening around us, do that. So I think the risk has to be there, but I think it's overrated, the risk part, because you're never going to take big financial risks. You're going to take big business risks in terms of trying new things, disrupting new things, building on new technologies. And one thing in our industry is very specific, is like for what we do, it's a very, very long-term bet. So what I start today is probably going to give me results 10 years from now. So that is the risk, and that risk we all have to take, because unless you can see 7, 8, 10 years out, it's going to be very, very difficult to build businesses. So I think that's been the biggest learning for all of us.
So thanks, yeah. The key point that I was trying to drive out there is, while there is tremendous opportunity, one has to be calibrated as to what one is doing. So thank you very much for your inputs on both of that. Now, quickly, tell me about your CSR initiatives. I think, you guys put in a lot of personal time effort, or family puts in a lot of personal time effort into CSR initiatives. Why would you be doing that? Why is it so important for you all to be kind of, trying to spread the goodness across to people?
Our emphasis as a family, I think it comes down from my grandfather's approach towards business. He always wanted to give back to the society after having made it big. He instilled in us the values to give back to society, and over the years we have undertaken many initiatives. We work on unique programs across healthcare access across public amenities. We've built 10 world-class parks in Ahmedabad. We're building 3 parks in Surat and a few more in Maharashtra. We've done a lot of work around pediatric healthcare. We run a 150-bed multi-speciality pediatric hospital in Surat, which is completely provides free of cost treatment to patients. We run a unique city arts program, which is called Abhivyakti in Ahmedabad. We've taken that to Surat and Baroda, which it provides a platform to upcoming and budding artists. So there is a lot of focus within the family and within the group to give back to society. And I think we see ourselves also as custodians of the wealth that has been created by the corporate entity. And it's only our responsibility to give back to society, and particularly in the areas where we have a major presence, in the geographic areas where we have a major presence. And that remains an emphasis within our family. Any conversations that we have in our family council typically involve the agenda of CSR every quarter when we meet. It's a critical component of our way forward, of our business plan as well. So I think there's a tremendous amount of focus around it. And I think I would urge each one of you, as many of you become large companies, to keep a focus on giving back. I think it's very important. I'm sure many of you have created wealth more than what you might need ever in life. So it's only important and incumbent upon us to give back a bit of it back to the society.
Thanks for that. That was quite, important. It's only when you give that you get. Sharvil, your views?
So I think the first thing for us, which is very, very important, is we employ today 26,000 plus employees. And I think the most important thing that we can do is, when you talk about inclusiveness, is to make sure that we continue to invest behind these people, whether it is by building more infrastructure to scale up and create employment, or at least make sure that there is a path to growth for people who work for the company. So I think the internal aspect of, first, the responsibility is to make sure it's more inclusive and make sure that as the company grows, so do people working for the organization have the opportunity to grow from being a worker or being a sales rep to growth in the organization. Beyond that, I think we do also have an impact, a negative impact on the environment that we work in also, with the work that we all do, and we have to minimize that impact. So for us as a company, we have picked up 2 areas, health and education. Because I think as a company and as a philosophy of the family, we believe that whatever we must do, we must be capable of doing, and have knowledge about doing that. So I think health has been a very critical focus for the company, and that's why we invest a lot in hospitals and other areas and camps around our facilities to uplift the hygiene and health of the area. And the second, which we have a very strong belief, is education. Education is a very critical aspect of, early education is a very critical aspect of how do you build good societies. So I think that's the second area that makes, that we really feel is critical and important for us to make sure that we keep invested in this. So it's very focused. We are not doing 100 things. We are only doing a couple of things, but we want to scale it up. We want to make it big. We want to make it sustainable, because the most important part of all of this is how do you make these things sustainable, and which continue beyond generations. As Jinal said, that we are just the guardians of this particular part, but the generation to come is more critical. So I think that's the effort that we as a company would keep doing.
We'll come to the business part of it now. Tell me, what is your vision of a developed India versus a developed, rest of the world that you guys see? What is different about a developed India, and how is it unfolding in front of your eyes? And the reason I'm asking this question is, both of them have the opportunity to operate from any part of the world. First, actually start off with, why India? Why did you all come back? With the kind of money you have, You can do business in any part of the world. You can live a more luxurious life anywhere. Why do you come back to India?
So I'm a third generation entrepreneur. I always felt growing up, when I had the opportunity to choose, I always felt at that point that I have the responsibility to preserve and grow the family legacy, to grow the family business. And that is something that really drove me towards deciding to come back to India. I studied abroad for a few years. I always knew that I wanted to come back. And I'm so glad I made that decision because I think India is a land of opportunities. It is a country where I truly believe I want to spend my years and I want to live my life. I love the people, the culture, and there is no other place in the world I would rather be than in India. So I think that's what drove me to decide to come back to India. Going back to your first question, I think India is on the cusp of explosive socio-economic growth. We are perhaps one of the unique countries in the world where economic growth, social growth, and quality of life improvement. I think there's growth across all of these parameters simultaneously. As we observe what is happening in the Indian government, the national priorities which have been set by our Prime Minister, I think it's, I love his vision, the way he sets agenda. He's always challenging himself and everyone around him. And the idea of a Viksit Bharat, a developed India by 2047, I think that really gives me the impression that it's a place, it's a country which will grow across all these parameters simultaneously. It will provide a great opportunity for people, young people. It will provide a great quality of life to people. And the socio-economic growth is something that I think it will just make India one of the finest and the best places to live in going forward. And I think the growth particularly will be centered around the advantages that India enjoys as the strategic advantages that India enjoys. I think we are a nation blessed with a lot of resources. We are a nation which has inherent advantages of a huge market. Like you mentioned, I think CREDAI has taken a goal to be a $1 trillion contribution to the economy by 2030. I think the population, the kind of consumerism that is likely to be there will drive the growth across the country, across sectors. I think it's one of the best places to invest in, and I'm really excited by the opportunities that India presents.
Sharvil, let me ask you the other question. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
I think I have some worries. The first worry I have is the next generations. I think somehow I feel there's a trend of people thinking that investing is a great business.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody just thinks that they are investors. Very few people want to do business. Very few people want to take risk. And it's a small trend that you get to see. And I think that's a little worrying because, yeah, it is important to preserve your wealth. It is important to preserve your family's legacy. It is important to have social security, financial security. But if you think that all you're going to do is bet on other people all the time and not think about you betting on your own self, I think that's a little bit worrying for India. That while India has all these tremendous opportunities, and somebody will take it, if not. But I think if people are blessed with safety, security in life, then they should take more risk, think bigger. It's okay to fail. I mean, I failed in a couple of businesses. That's not the big issue. But you have the opportunity to fail, and you still don't want to take that opportunity. I think it's a big disservice to what we can do. And the second is, I also strongly believe that India has all the opportunity, but we must also think a little bit global. We are in a global world. I think one must, if one has the opportunity, one must explore doing business outside of India, using the India advantage. And I think that could really transform companies from being just locally dominant companies to globally more recognized companies. And I think that would be I would say the next leap, maybe not the next 7-8 years, but if you talk about the next 2 decades, definitely Indian companies should become the global companies of the world if India has to become a developed country or a developed nation. So I would say those two things are, I would say, are very important, that people should not be always inward looking, but also outward looking in terms of looking at a larger horizon that is available.
This is truly a big problem. It brings back what Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai said, right? My father was on a camel, I drive a car, my son will live a luxurious life and his son will come back on a camel. So if we don't build some amount of resilience in our people, we will all go towards that easy money or just wanting to sit down and invest and make money that way, and there'll not be enough doers. But thank you for sharing that. Question to you, where do you see yourself as a company 2047, for instance? It's too far, wait. 2030, for instance. 7 years is good enough. Yeah.
So I think this all started, and it links to your earlier point as to why I came back to India. The first thing is, I'm very grateful that my family gave me a choice. So there was a choice whether I come back or I continue to stay outside. And for whatever reason, I've been brought up in a joint family. So obviously there are some values that come very dear to me in terms of how I've been brought up. But I was always very passionate about, didn't understand it, but very passionate about the field of cancer. And somehow or the other, I ended up doing my studies in that. And when my father asked me this question, okay, what would you want to do? You want to come back or you want to stay there? If you're going to stay there, I don't want to work so hard. I will work till I can and I will sell my business and we all live happily ever after. But if you decide to come back, I will continue to do what it is. And the reason for me to come back was that I would have never found this opportunity where I would have all the infrastructure, capabilities, money to try and pursue what I felt I would like to do. So I think that was the biggest reason, and that talks about now the company and where the company, maybe where we see the company going forward. So I have a very strong conviction. Many Indian companies have done very well by being a great manufacturer, producing anything at affordable pricing, good quality, and making success. And all our companies have been successful doing that. I think if you talk about maybe not 2030, but a little beyond 2030, it has to be then innovation. You cannot just be a powerhouse of manufacturing, especially when you talked about being sustainable and how do you, for a country of our population and size, if you are only going to produce cheaper, I think you're going to do a big disservice. I talk about this analogy that China makes the cheapest toys. It's a disaster. It's a climatic disaster that you can use a toy once and throw it away, and you don't think about it. And there were days when we were younger, when you buy a toy, that toy probably goes to the next generation. Today, that toy can't even go to the next day because it's so cheaply made, right? So it's a big disservice that we are doing by thinking that we should be the cheapest. We should be just keeping on producing. I think the future for all of us is how would one be incrementally innovate, do something new, do something different, and create value. Because unless you create differentiation, you are all going to fight for pennies, and I'm going to fight for pennies. And I don't have any interest in fighting for pennies all my life. So for the company, our vision is very clear. We will be a discovery-led organization by 2030. At least have the vision to be a discovery-led organization by 2030, which would mean we'll work on disease areas where nobody's working on and find solutions for and see if we are successful. Because if you're not successful, I'm happy doing what I'm doing today and I'll continue to do more of what I'm doing today, but I'm going to pollute the earth. I'm going to do a lot of things bad to make money, and that's not the only reason why we all work. So I would say the vision for our company in the next 10 years is that we become a discovery-led organization. But we will stay to the purpose of being creating access and affordability, because you cannot give that up. That's what we have been built on. But the transition maybe in the next 30, 40 years, if India is going to be a developed country, and if you look at developed countries, innovation is a very big thing. US didn't go into recession just because of strong innovation or innovative companies that existed there. And in spite of all the challenges that that country faced, you're still seeing great companies who have just stood and withstood all of these challenges. So I think the future for us is innovation. The future for Zydus is to do something different. The future for us is to globalize and not localize alone. And that would be the biggest, I would say, achievement that if we're able to do over the next 10 years.
Thanks for that. Yeah. I have a question for you, Jinal. We real estate developers, first of all, I want to just say something before that. We real estate developers actually build for the very long term. We are not that Chinese toy. We build for generations after, So, true wealth creation, guys, that's what we do. So, Jinal, question for you. We believe that we are all over-regulated. Do you believe in such a thing, that over-regulation? And how do you guys, especially in the pharma business, deal with regulatory pressures or regulatory issues?
So
mindset-wise, more than
I want to share the analogy of the power and gas sectors, which I lead within the group. I feel they're some of the most highly regulated sectors in the country. I'm sure it's much more than what the real estate sector is regulated at. The power sector is regulated to the extent that your tariff is also determined by the regulator. So the price you charge is also determined by a regulator. Imagine the government regulates the price at which you sell your apartment. I think that is the extent of regulation that my industry faces. I doubt any of you would be interested in the business if that were so. But I feel that sectors require regulation. They require regulatory oversight. I think even globally, if you see, most sectors are regulated, even in developed countries. We are at a stage in our cycle as a country where we are transitioning from a developing to a developed nation. There are a lot of participants in the market, whether it's the power sector or the real estate sector. Those participants need to be regulated by the government. And without a regulatory framework, things would just go awry. And consumers will not get the kind of service and the kind of product that they should. So I think regulation is good. I get your point when you say that is there over-regulation. I think governments tend to at times over-regulate when they feel that the industry is not meeting their expectations in terms of customer satisfaction or the way they should treat customers. There will be environmental regulations, right? Because each sector now is being regulated from an environment standpoint because it's for the future generations. It's important, it's imperative. So I think that there's no such thing as over-regulation. I think it's transient. It's always transient. There will be industry response towards a particular regulation that the government comes out with. And my experience so far over the years in dealing with the government on so many different aspects across the power sector and gas sectors has been that they see reason. There may be a transient phase where you feel that, okay, things are not right, but at the end, things fall in place. And I think the government is very, has its ears to the ground. They understand the industry's concerns, and they try to achieve that fine balance, has been my experience.
So your mindset towards regulation is it's needed, accept and
Absolutely,
move
I
on.
think so.
What about you? The pharma industry is over-regulated, I think, penalized if some regulations are not, or are flouted, or are not in line. How do you guys deal with it?
So I think it first starts with this word that we all use, trust. I think lack of trust leads to more regulations. Sometimes. Also, I also believe that consistency is something that is more critical than regulation. I think having a regulation is critical. We are, at least in us, we are in the life-saving industry, we cannot not be regulated because we are going to make medicines that need to be effective and of high quality. But I think it is very, very important that there is some consistency to a framework of how regulations should be. And if you are able to be that and not keep on changing, not keep on making too many changes too fast, too quickly, I think every company or companies can achieve a good standard. The second issue is you can have the best of laws. Are you going to be able to enforce these laws? In India, we have a quality manufacturing standard, but we have way too many companies to look after. I'm sure you have similar issues in your sector as well.
The point I was trying to drive for my members out here, and everything that I'm asking you is more from the point of view of what we keep communicating. Guys, look at how they think at regulation, right? They accept, they understand, then they kind of work on it. What generally is, unfortunately, our earlier reaction used to be, oh, one more regulation, this is unbelievable, government should be spoken to. I think let us all accept that regulation is important. If we believe regulation is important in pharma, in power, in the cement industry, in this, we will also be regulated. It's part of the ecosystem that we will have to kind of deal with. So I guess the point I'm trying to drive across, and you can say yes or no, is there an acceptance of the regulation for the betterment of the business, and how does your mindset, how is the company or your industry's mindset towards these? Do you all rally together and say, we'll have to go to the government and change it? Or do you all say, it's acceptable, let's work towards that? What?
No, I think in any regulation that the government comes out with, there is normally a consultation process that the government runs. And in all of our sectors, even in the pharma sector, we have industry body called the IPA. In the power sector, we have an industry body. In the gas sector, we have an industry body. And for every regulation or a draft regulation that the government comes out with, we as an industry go to the government, interact with them. I'm sure, like you mentioned earlier, CREDAI does that as well. We go to the government, interact with them, give them our suggestions, explain them our point of view. We don't accept the regulation as it comes because it is a consultative process, and I think the government also sees it as that. We may feel disheartened because things may not ultimately turn out to our expectations, but like I said, I've always observed things are always transitionary, they are always transient, and the government, if you're right on a certain issue, will see reason in it. If not today, a year later, 6 months later. And at times you have to suffer the pain for the time duration that it takes the government to realize what is wrong and what needs to be fixed.
We have a similar consultative process, and we're fortunate that CREDAI is now called upon by the government every time they're looking at doing something new, and we keep on inviting suggestions from you also. Please feel free to kind of give suggestions. Don't just give laments, give actual suggestions as to what really needs to be done. Sharvil, you want to add anything to that?
So I'll give an example. And this, we all have, while we're regulated by India, because of global supply, we're regulated by other regulators as well. They're US FDA and others, right? So we obviously had an audit for one of our facilities. It went through not so good. The audit was bad. We got penalized for it. And I think the learning came in two things, and this is the learning that came from our chairman, that first thing he did said, let's not argue saying we didn't do anything wrong. Let's first accept, because if we don't accept, we will not improve. So I think that is the first thing, that we cannot always be saying that we were right and the regulators were wrong. So first is the acceptance that one needs to do, because only then can one improve. And the second is, then if you are able to do that, then your people will be with you in terms of that improvement. So I think it's very, very important that some of these things are not in our control. Regulations are such that it's not that we are the only company that gets affected, but it's important how do you accept it, how do you overcome it by improving whichever way the government expects or the regulator expects.
Thanks for that. Guys, you know there's one business that touches every part of everyone's life, and that is real estate. Do you agree? I mean, from the time the home you live in, the office you go to, the factories you build, whether you do it yourself or not, it's real estate, right?
Yeah,
what are your views on real estate? You have another view? No, you agree? You don't agree?
No, I'm sure yes, medicine is also very essential for you as well.
Medicines you don't need on a regular basis. A home you need every day. Come on, guys. Don't clap for that.
I would say that power
home you
is
can
more
inherit.
essential.
I don't think you can inherit a medicine.
Okay. Power also touches people, medicines also touch people, but real estate touches you every step of the way. What is your, let's put it this way, view on the real estate developers across the country? One. And two is, what would be the one or two things that you would like to tell us? I mean, be prescriptive. Just go out there and say, guys, do this. Whoever wants to go first. He usually waits for you to...
No, sorry. So, I think... I quite like the growth acronym that you explained.
Thank you.
I think it's very relevant for your industry. But I'm not an expert at real estate, so let me just give you some general prescriptive suggestions.
Investor views.
Sorry?
People want to invest in real estate views.
So I think it's important to, in your industry and in many other industries, invest in creating a brand. It's important to never let your customers lose faith in you. Be customer focused. Give them what you promise them, deliver them what you promise them. I think it's very important to live up to the expectations of customers. Thirdly, I think it's important to take a view on risk, draw risk parameters, draw your own guidelines, keep your focus on things that you think are necessary. Don't get distracted. It's very easy to get distracted in any business. Retain your focus and very clearly, in your minds at least, draw out your boundary conditions. Lastly, I think don't let your ego get the better of you. Because in any business, when you meet success, egos get inflated. And that is a recipe for disaster, in my view. Stay humble, stay focused on always upholding all of your stakeholders, whether it's employees, whether it's your banks, whether it's your suppliers. Always continue to ensure that you have their trust and their goodwill.
Sharvil, the question for you, which I will change slightly for my audience to, or my dear developers here to get a better idea. What will make you invest more in real estate? First of all, what is your general idea of a portfolio, and then what would make you invest more in real estate? What kind of things you'd like to see from us?
So I have stayed a little bit away from this part of the business side. But one thing I was told, which I completely believe in, is that if you buy land, you don't sell before 10 years. If you buy property, you don't keep more than 10 years. So that's one thing I learned from, I think, somebody from here only. But I think there is something that worries me about real estate, which is specific to India. I've never understood this concept that land is more precious than a building.
Exactly.
And I think it's completely warped in India. And I think it's a big disservice to many of you, I would say, and the industry, that it cannot be that land has a higher value than what you build with so much effort on it, and it depreciates to an extent almost. So I think that one day needs to clear up. I don't know when that will ever happen. And that the day that happens, I would feel very, very comfortable of talking about real estate and the growth of real estate, I would say.
So actually that's happening right now. A lot of developers are continuing to realize the power of holding on to an asset and actually monetizing it over a longer period of time rather than just building, because the kind of, well, I would say the efforts that go into building a fantastic building and then kind of just selling it off, over time you will learn to. But both of you should look at actively investing in real estate. Yeah, I'm pontificating, about the good that we are doing and stuff, and I'm not able to convince both of you. Come on, tomorrow let's have your family offices speak to us.
I look forward to a good deal in a Rustomji project.
All right, you got it. Okay, I promised Hari I'll wind up 5 minutes earlier because of the long initial talk, but I have to ask one question. If you were to tell yourself, your 20-year-old self or 25-year-old self, as to something that you've learnt over time, what would that one thing be? Just one thing.
I think for me it's been my father and my uncle. They when I joined the business, they had a plan for me. They inducted me in a specific way. I think the one lesson that they taught me early on in my career was to believe in and practice demonstrative leadership. And what they meant by that was that they expected me to spend my time at project sites, to live the life that I expected our employees to sort of commit long hours, to commit their own heart and soul into a project. I was sent to project sites. I stayed at remote locations in Gujarat for about 6 years, on the outskirts of Surat initially, and then in a place called Dahej in Gujarat. I spent my formative years there. And the one thing, like I said, I learned there at that time was to practice demonstrative leadership. I wore the same uniform that the employees were expected to wear. I traveled to work in the same buses that the other employees were expected to travel in. I stayed for the same amount of hours that the other employees were expected to stay in. So I think that is one lesson that is was imparted to me in my formative years and has stood with me in all these years at work.
Do you want to tell us what you have done wrong or what could be done right if you had the knowledge you had to have today at when you were 25? Or what is the one thing you tell yourself? Do it differently, do it this way.
So I think it's not a very, I got into business. I started looking after this business called consumer wellness business. I thought I understood everything about skincare. So I rebranded and rechanged my product, and it bombed so badly in the market. So I don't think it's a question of learning, but I think it was my youth, or whatever word I can use to say, that made me think that I understand everything about what skincare means, which I just didn't understand anything. But so I think but I would say more than that, what I wanted to talk about, which you just said, is I have a very strong belief, and I'm not saying this is the right belief, but in infrastructure for pharmaceuticals. You guys are obviously all the time doing what you're doing, but our industry is a mixed industry. Our industry can be run without manufacturing. You can go to a third party, he can manufacture products for you, and you sell those products everywhere. And my oldest learning that has come from this is and it's very important, that's why I want to share it, is in 1995 when our company split, and we were two people, and the companies got separated, and we made losses in the first 2 years. My father had the opportunity to raise some money, and he wanted to build a plant. And some big banker in the US decided to invest behind us. And while signing, sitting in Taj Chambers, my dad was sitting, he was sitting, and the CEO had come from there and says, he says, I'll give you this money, but I will give you this money if you put it in marketing and not in manufacturing. Because you can buy cheaper from outside and make, but you invest in your brand. And my father at that time said, thank you, I don't need your money. And at that point in time, a bank in India, I won't name it, but the bank in India, first time valued our brands rather than our asset, because we had no asset. And gave us money. But that learning has stayed very much for me, that we strongly believe in investing in manufacturing, building capabilities, quality. And the biggest learning I got recently is when we all suffered from COVID, and we as a company were producing remdesivir. And we produce the largest remdesivir in India. And obviously the cheapest, but that's not important. But what was more important, because we had the infrastructure to have 7 plants manufacture a lyophilized product, we were able to cater to all the requirements that the government wanted, and we never defaulted in any requirement. So I think there's a lot of intrinsic value in creating infrastructure, creating assets, building assets, and I think it can go a long way. Short term, it may never look good, but long term, I think it is a great value creation for us.
Thank you for that. Guys, I think we've got most of it covered, but if there's any one relevant question somebody wants to ask, though we are out of time, go on.
I'm lucky to have seen both your older generation work, and I really admire them. But I have not a question. I wish to seek your very short views on CSR by large corporates. Should it ever go to the higher education, which most corporates in India have not really invested on? If you see the largest universities where you guys also studied, were funded by the families keeping 100 years vision. Do you think that's very relevant for us to become a real developed nation? Your views, please. Thank you.
So I fully agree that, as I said, for us, health and education are the most intrinsic things that we would like to commit behind. And our wish one day is to build a life sciences university as well, because we are very passionate about that area. But I do agree that more and more endowment, creating of capabilities by big corporates is important to build. Gujarat has given, or Ahmedabad, Vikram Sarabhai, and then a lot of those families have given so much in terms of education in all major institutes, which still today stand the test of time. And then there was a lull. No industrialist was really putting any effort behind education. But I think it's changing. I can see a lot of change now in our city of Ahmedabad. And I am sure it's happening across, in Delhi, it's happening, I think, in other places, that I think big companies or people who have the resources are putting money behind building world-class education or universities. And it is going to happen. And one has to collaborate, bring the best from outside here also in terms of learning. So I do fully agree that I do believe in the next 10 years we will see many more of these examples.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing with us. Guys, a big round of applause. These guys have flown all the way down to speak to all of you and share their insights. Like I said, they're both behemoths, both running 60,000 plus crore companies. I think we're all very fortunate to have you here. Thank you very, very much. I understand you're on a flight out of here immediately after this. So have a safe flight, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As Boman said, thank you very much to the esteemed panelists, and thank you very much, Mr. Irani, for moderating this session.